Hi friends, Mindy here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing some ideas with you on what you can do with the pieces in this little pack of goodies from Bythewell4god. This was the This and That Collage Pieces pack that they released with the newest kit, Growing in Truth. And so there's just a lot of fun little pieces in here that you can do different things with. So every pack is just a little bit different in what, like, the styles of paper and things that are in there, but you do get some different sizes of paper, some tickets, some vintage book paper here you can see. There's also some like print paper, so you have these botanical images, and these are really going to go well with the coordinating or to coordinate with the devotional this month. And so there's some book pages here. There's also a beautiful vintage map page in here that I absolutely love. And so you're going to see me kind of work through this pack, and you could do this. I believe that there are still some of these kits available, but if you weren't able to get one, there are some other options, just pulling out things from your stash. Now, this kit did also come with a really fun set of die cuts in this fun little craft paper bag. And so this is actually going to be the first thing that we do. I'm going to create a fun pocket out of this brown paper bag. And so I'm just going to kind of set everything out to the side here so that I have everything kind of at a glance. And as I like to do this when I'm making ephemera kind of in a mass make situation, just to give me some ideas. Also, this would be really good to use up some of your scraps that you may be having around, even leftover bits from your kits that you could use. So the first thing that I wanted to do here is I trimmed off just that one little section of the flap part of this pocket. And that's going to open up that little section here so that I can make a pocket. And I'm just kind of gluing down some of the little extra pieces of paper where the folds are from this bag. And then I'm going to glue up the sides here. In hindsight, should have waited to do that, but you kind of see how this is going to work. So there's going to be that little pocket there on the bottom. And then when I glue this into a journal, this will also create a pocket. And of course, the bag itself will be a pocket. So it's a lot of real estate for this one little paper bag. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take one of these pieces of paper that were in this and That Collage pack here. These are basically just some double-sided scrapbooking papers, I think. And I'm going to trim it down. I'm also going to distress the edges of it. So I want to rough those up just a little bit. I'm going to use my little Tim Holtz tool here to do that, just to kind of, make everything a little bit more vintage looking. And I am going to try to keep a little bit of a border around this. So I did trim that so you can still actually see the brown paper bag behind it. I just like the craft with it, and I just think it looks fun that way. So I'm going around with some ink as well. I'm using archival ink in ground espresso just to distress a little bit of the edges. And so now I'm going to glue this first section on. This is really to cover up all the printing on the bottom of my little bag here. And then I'm going to kind of create a background now on the top section. I am going to use some of these ephemera pieces that came with this kit, but I felt like my bag was maybe just a little bit too tall, so I cut off a couple inches off of the top. Depending on the size journal that you're putting that in, you could, keep it that full length if you wanted to, or even, depending on how big your Bible is, if you wanted to try to put it in there, it would be a little bit chunky, but definitely something that you could do. For me, this will go into one of the junk journals that I create. So pulling out a couple of these other pieces that kind of coordinate, that have sort of the same green in it, and also some pink, kind of a peachy pink as well. And I did actually tear this down because I don't need the full section of it, because I'm going to add just a little bit of this to the top right hand corner. This is just another green that coordinates with that bottom section, and then that pink will kind of overlap that. And again, I'm leaving a border around this. This would have been a little bit easier to do had I left that flap open for just a minute. So I did have to trim it down so that it would kind of tuck down behind that little pocket there, which is fine, but you can see I'm just kind of sliding everything down in. I'm using a Yoo-hoo glue stick for all of these big pieces that I'm collaging down. I just find that I like the coverage that I get from that. And then these thicker ephemera pieces, because they're on a thicker paper, I'm going to glue those down with my art glitter glue. So I'm just going to create a little bit of a cluster here. I love these ephemera pieces that were in this little collage piece pack. They are just so fun and cute. And very versatile. So I took another piece that was kind of bigger and ran horizontally that I could put on that bottom section of my little pocket there. I also took one of the little random squares, and I'm going to use that as a backdrop for this word that says garden, and I'm just inking all of those pieces as well, just to kind of keep everything at cohesive. I did trim down that little piece that said garden just ever so slightly so that it would fit in that little square. I guess it's more of a rectangle, but those are so fun. There's a lot of the things that you can do with those little random rectangles. I saw Angela used some of the really tiny stamps and actually stamping them, which was just really cute. I did feel like I needed something to kind of balance that top right hand corner, so I did pull from my stash one of these little labels. This is a printable actually from Michelle at the Junk Journal Studio, and so I just pulled that from my stash. It matched, and I just felt like it just needed a little extra something up there in the top right hand corner. So that is going to be it. So you can see there's a pocket there, a pocket at the top, and then when I glue this down, it will also create a pocket. So a lot of real estate for hiding some notes and journaling, prayers, whatever, in that journal. So the next thing I'm pulling out are these other items that were in this kit, which are these kind of beautiful little floral images. And I'm just pulling out some of the scrapbook paper that kind of coordinates in color with it. And these are just going to be the focal image. And I'm just going to create a cluster with some of the other ephemera pieces. So you can see I'm going around all of these pieces again with that archival ink. I did want to break up this a little bit from the background, and so I pulled out one of those doilies that also came in the kit. These are just little paper doilies, and that's going to kind of be the backdrop for my little cluster here. I am going to leave that one section kind of hanging off the edge over there on the left side, and I'm just going to start kind of gluing everything from the top down. I find that it helps me when I'm doing a cluster like this to do it that way so that I keep everything kind of where I want it. So I glued that top piece down to that flower, and then the flower down to the doily, and I'm just kind of marking where the edge of that is, and then I will put adhesive around here and then kind of around the edge of the paper doily as well, just so it doesn't curl up too much. And then I'm actually going to leave that other section of the doily. I thought about cutting it off, which you could certainly do, but this is double-sided paper, and so what I'm going to do is just go ahead and wrap it around to the back side. And I think that this will be a perfect journaling card, or you could even create a pocket out of it. I don't know how it will end up in the journals down the road that I'm making this for, but it will either be a journaling spot or it will be a pocket or something like that. So again, just adding a little more ink there, and now we have a little, I'm going to call it journaling card for right now. And now I'm moving on to this little coin envelope that was in there. I actually like the color of that with one of these little cards that has, I think, some different vegetables and stuff on it. And so I'm just going to ink both of these. You could definitely cover this in paper if you wanted to, with even the paper that came in this little package. I am going to add some music paper. This is from the page that came in here as well, just to kind of break up some of that color, just add a little bit of interest there in the background. Again, just using my glue stick to do that. I like the Yoo-Hoo glue stick because it's permanent and it's strong adhesive, so I know that my papers are not going to go anywhere. And then I'm going to kind of put this here. It does take up a good size, a good chunk of this little coin envelope, but I do want to add another one of those little rectangles, just again to kind of break up the area from the background music paper to the ephemera piece here. It just adds another layer of interest. And then I toyed with putting something along the bottom. In the end, I pulled out a Tim Holtz label here, and just a little, like with just some numbers, just to have a little bit more interest down there at the bottom and kind of break up that bottom section. And then again, just going in with these floral images. I think they just are so cute, and this is just a quick way to make some pockets or tags. You could do this all on tags if you wanted to as well. So again, just pulling out pieces that match from the scrapbook paper, the little rectangles that are, pieces from the previous Bythewell4god paper releases with the devotionals. And then I did add a couple of little pieces from Tim Holtz just to kind of make my little cluster down there at the bottom. And then I'm going to glue this back section here, and then this whole cluster is already kind of glued together, and that's just going to cover that bottom right hand corner. And so it's just a mix of some Tim Holtz in there and some of the pieces from this kit. And then again, just going around with my archival ink there. And then this last one, I already tore some of the paper. This is from another, this was actually the piece from earlier, but we're now just using the pink side, and I love that about double-sided paper, especially when it all coordinates. So I do want to add something along the bottom there, where my paper is just a little bit too short. So I'm pulling some paper from my stash. This is actually from a paper pack that I sell, some vintage paper, and I really loved this little seed pack of these herbs, and it's kind of hard to tell on camera, but there is just a little bit of pink in that herb pack, and so that's why I have the pink in the background. And then I'm just gluing down this vintage paper across the bottom, mostly to kind of cover up that area where my paper wasn't long enough. And I decided to just tear the edges of this one and leave it like that. I like the rough edges on there. And then I'm going to glue down my little ephemera piece here. I will add a couple other things, just kind of trying to get this in place. Whenever I'm layering, I like to kind of make sure I have something covering the intersection of all of the different places. I just find it looks a little bit more cohesive that way. So this is another label from the Junk Journal Studio that I thought I was going to use down on the bottom, but I wasn't quite convinced about that. So I pulled out some other things, just kind of trying to decide how best to do this. I wanted something up at the top as well. So I pulled in one of those rectangles, but I wasn't really happy with how that was looking either. So I went ahead and pulled out some other pieces that I'm just going to kind of set those off to the side. So another little label here with the 4.5 cents. I thought that would work. In the end, though, I went with just another label that kind of had a scripty font on there. Again, that's from the Junk Journal Studio. And then I thought I would try another one of these rectangles from the Collage Pieces, but I really just couldn't get it to look the way that I wanted it to. So I kind of scrapped that idea, but I wanted to pull in some more pink. So I went back to my Tim Holtz ephemera and just pulled out a little tiny itty bitty circle, and just added that there just to continue that pink down at the bottom left-hand corner. And this is what they look like when they're finished. So if you like this video, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and until next time, bye.